so they carry on.
Hello, what's up, everybody? It's me, Pixel, and we are back at it today with some world building for Stars Without Number. Devilish Clusters, what's up, friend? How you doing? We are testing things out. I think we got everything working, so we're gonna let it ride. I apologize. It looked like we had some drop frames, but I think it's stabilizing now. So to catch folks up to date, we've been doing some world building for a game called Stars Without Number. If you don't know what Stars Without Number is, it is a tabletop role-playing game that is loosely based on D&D-ish through a group of games that came out in the sort of mid-2010s or early 2010s, maybe even before that, called the OSR, the Old School Renaissance. Gonna be honest, I don't really care much about the Old School Renaissance in general, but I've seen people play this game. I already had bought a copy of it, and so when all the OGL stuff happened with D&D, I decided, you know what, I'm going to commit to learning some other games outside of just D&D, and so this was one of the ones I picked because... Oh, I don't have walk-on set on this, I'm sorry. I don't have the... So yeah, it was one of the ones I picked because I already had the book, and I was like, this is not a D&D game. You know, not
and
wizards.
We wanted
to
run some sci-fi.
Yeah,
We've been doing fantasy for a bit.
Exactly. And I'm really enjoying what we're doing. So I will say, those of you who have watched the first one of these world building streams that we did for this, I have done a little bit of work in the background over the last couple of weeks in between then and now on some faction stuff and some region stuff. We decided in our sector the different regions are called clusters. You know, different clusters of stars. I think that terminology is kind of fun. And so that's how we're sort of conceiving of this sector. We have like 4 main clusters. And they each have probably major factions, and then they'll have room for some minor factions and stuff. And so we're very excited about that. So we're going to just jump over to the screen share. If you guys remember last time what we did... Oh, I guess I should also introduce
when last we numbered our stars.
Right, when last we left our sector. I should introduce, of course, my partner in crime here.
Oh yeah, the floating ghost voice in the background.
Yes, exactly. The floating ghost voice in the background is not a AI who is participating in our discussion. This is my best friend Beast.
Yo, hi, I'm Beast. I'm your bonus bud. And I would play... nope, wrong thing. Okay. But most of you probably know me as Roz Hiskers on the semi-weekly Region of Bedegar campaign that we run on the AOA Twitch.
Exactly. And yeah, so we are collaborating on some of the world building for this to kind of bounce ideas back and forth. Last time, most of what we did was just kind of roll up the main stars in the sector and start rolling up the planets. And I finished that and started a bit of the work on the faction. So probably the first thing I should do is bring everybody up to date on where we are currently at. So as you can see on my sector map, you now see some green lines, you see some colors on different things. Essentially what that means, what those are, some of these solid colors in these clusters represent our regional clusters. So we have our gray, our green, our yellow, and our red regional clusters. Each one of those is largely dominated by a singular faction that's like the major faction, except for this lower zone here, which is a bit more of a conflict zone. Any of these sectors that have the stripes on them, that is where the homeworlds of the major factions are. With the exception of this one, is a home world of one of the major factions, but also there is another we'll call it a minor faction related to them in that home world. And they're sort of opposed to each other. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're currently at. We also
I
have
wanna,
built. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Just gonna say I want to catch up, folks, a little bit about what we did in terms of how we put these planets together. We basically used a table provided by the game, which is excellent in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a
That
pretty good
you
table.
just roll two D100s, I think, and it gives you two, sometimes
Packs.
complementary, sometimes competing, and sometimes completely unrelated things that
Yeah.
you apply to those systems, and that's how we came up with all the little personality
Mm-hmm.
quirks, let's call them.
Yeah, and it worked really well. We curated it a little bit. There were certain things that came up that was like, oh, we already had another one of those when we
Yeah, we rolled a
re-rolled,
bunch.
or there were certain things that we were like, I know I want one of these in this area. Like, I have a bit more of an idea of what I want to be going on in the top right sector because it's kind of I'm planning a campaign that I think is gonna
Starting hub,
start in
yeah.
that cluster. And I have some plot hooks that I'm mulling over. And so we curated that a little more, but we got a lot of really interesting results off of that table. And
And
so
it really helped define the clusters, yeah.
yeah, and each of the systems and all that. So right now we have placeholder names for a bunch of this stuff. I've basically labeled everything according to the number that we rolled in the order, right? So the systems where it's like system 8 and system 16, those were the 8th and 16th out of like 26 systems that we rolled or whatever, right? So we'll do some work, I think, on trying to like dig into the details. We didn't get much into the details last time, and we won't be able to get into every detail of every part of the sector. But we're gonna zoom in and focus in on some of those details today, and we have a lot of stuff to play with. We can add more points of interest to given sectors and not sectors, given systems. Also, let's talk about that terminology real quick, and I'm gonna mess it up a
Yeah.
lot. This whole
The whole
map
map is the
is
sector,
a sector,
right?
and it includes all of these stars and all of this empty space and this black hole. Everything in here is a sector. Any place that has a star in it is called a system. It is a star system or a system of planets. Sorry, you wanted to defend. What is that? What's up, Panda? Welcome in, buddy. It's a system, and the systems are, it's a star system, and all of the systems have at least one main planet in them. Bonus Mom, welcome in as well. And these planets have at least one planet that generally has some sort of like remnant of human civilization or something like that.
Or a venture or colony or
Interest point
something.
something.
Right.
None of these places are just like empty points on the map, right? Other than the ones that are literally already empty, which just basically make up the space between stuff. The space is big. And then, yeah, so you've got the sector, you've got systems. We will refer to these groupings as clusters. So this is a cluster, and this is a cluster, and this whole shit right here is a cluster, and then you have some one-off systems that don't really fit into any of the clusters, that maybe they're independent and stuff like that. So that is kind of what we have going on, and we have a lot of different stuff that we can dig into. Like I said, we can make more points of interest in any given system or planet. We can do faction work, or we can do cluster wide work about like what's the vibe of this cluster, or we can dig really far into like what's going on with this particular planet and and its situation in terms of it being like a site for adventure. So
I'm curious in terms of the whole faction thing, because
yeah.
I look at this map and I see the various colors and all the pretty dots and numbers, and the first thing that you notice is how things are divided, how they're separated and isolated from one another. My question is, are there any global factions? Is there any group, association, or volunteer organization which exists in all of
Mhm.
these places?
Sure. So the thing I would say about that is when we talk about factions in this game, the way it conceives of factions has to do with power centers, right? So there may be, for instance, if like we have several, I think, religious cults. These folks down here are engaged in like a
I think
holy
there's a
war.
crusade. Yeah.
Yeah. These, and then we have a eugenic cult over here. Like we have different like stuff like that. Or we have these trade guys or this mega corporation, which is a regional hegemon, which might want to expand and things like that. But when this game thinks of factions, you may have, like if we look at these two things right here, right? This top right cluster and the central cluster, right? There's going to be a close business relationship between the mega corporation that runs this whole top right cluster and between these merchant people in the middle cluster, right? That means there's going to be corporate offices and stuff like that for this, or people who work for them or people who have heritage from this other cluster in the merchant cluster, right?
Mm.
But unless there's a power center for the corporation in this cluster, they don't have like control over it. Or we have these holy wars people down here, right? They may have sent missionaries all throughout the galaxy. People may believe in their ideology in this all over this sector, right? But do they have a temple here? Do they have secret agents here? Do they have, like those are the kind of assets and power centers that the game's sort of like side mechanics are concerned with, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So the answer to the question is that, like, yeah, like interstellar travel happens in this game, and people also Synapsis attempted follow. Thank you for the follow. You like people from all different like ideologies and any part of the sector could be found anywhere else in the sector, right? But the question is one of power centers, right? So it's like,
Okay.
if there's this religious organization here down in the bottom left, right? You could run into missionaries and zealots for them up in the top right, but unless these folks have power centers, they're not going to be like major players in that sector, but they might be minor players in that sector, So I think it's reasonable to assume that unless they're very insular, you could find people associated with any given faction just about anywhere if that we need them to be there, right? But the other thing that we want to consider is spreading faction influence requires assets, bases of influence, and actually like there's a whole sort of like mini game thing that the GM can play that actually has like really specific rules for like, it's almost like a solo RPG you can play, where you're like, okay, each turn, each faction gets to do one action. Like this faction's going to buy a sphere of influence over here. This faction is going to use their like death commandos to attack this base over here. And it's like all designed to give you like these broad sector-wide narratives of like what's happening to give you seeds for things that your players could be interested in doing, basically. It's like, oh, if these two factions are conflicting, does one or the other side try to hire them in order to, and we know that there was this big battle in this particular base. Well, what if they get hired to go in afterwards and like extract a particular person who is like important? You know what I mean? Like stuff like that system is kind of designed to replicate, if that makes sense, or that could set up the backstory of your sector. I don't know that we'll really get into playing all of that game, but those are like the way that this system approaches that concept of factions.
Got it. So that's too big of a scope for today.
Yes.
Clearly.
Yeah.
which is the too long didn't read version of the last couple of minutes of explanation, if you
Sorry.
out.
I'm real bad for that. I really am. Yeah. So, but we can talk about the specific factions that I have kind of come up with.
Yeah, so let's talk about the factions, where their power centers are, and maybe what we can do is put points of interest where those aren't.
Yeah, possibly. So, I'll tell you what I am most interested in personally.
Yeah.
The two zones that really I'm drawn the most to are this corporate zone in the top right and this big mess of central shit going on here. I don't have a good name for this cluster yet. I forget what I actually called it in the cluster list. I just called it the war cluster. So well, that's like the temporary name for
Makes
it,
sense. Yeah.
right? So we've got the corporate cluster and the war cluster, and those are the things that I'm most interested in. I know you're really drawn to System 15, the quarantine world.
Yeah, but I mean that's I think the best thing to do likely is to focus on starting cluster, and clearly it has the most direct relationship with the merchant cluster. So
Right.
um
Yeah, and
this
that's a
is
good
a
point. And
this is,
also
I
the
guess,
merchant cluster is
a bit of a
crucial as the like crossroads between all of these different spots. Like you really
exactly.
can't get from any of these clusters to any of the other clusters without hitting the merchant cluster. Unless you're
And
yeah,
here's the
even with
other
the
thing
best
though.
ships, you can't do a bunch of this. So
Because the merchant cluster is in the middle, and it is the conduit through which the three clusters likely, you know, interact. Um, I think it's likely that the merchant cluster may be influenced somewhat by the individual clusters, or it might actually have a completely different. It might, because of its position, it might double down in its own eccentricities, in which case it stands completely apart.
yeah. Well, yeah. So let's look at what we currently have. We have 2 planets in systems 4 and 16. System 4 is the home world of like the merchant organization, and that made the most sense to me based on what we rolled for the
The
random generated stuff, right?
right.
System 16, we got this desert outpost, which I'm thinking of that more like, it's this conduit for the stuff coming from this corpo world stuff in the top right. But I'm thinking it's like a stopover, right? This is not a system like the people here are only here because this is a good leapfrogging point to other places for all of these goods
Right.
and services. And so there's some amount of like civilization built up around it, but it's very much like an outpost along this is probably a terrible reference, but like an outpost along like the Silk Road. You know what I mean? That's just like people come through here. It's like it's like the last stop before the main crossroads, but like you do have to stop here. You know what I mean? Because like you're running out of starship fuel or whatever. So, you know,
Yeah, I think a caravansary would probably be a better analogy. I mean, caravansaries were found along the Silk Road. It's a pit stop.
it's a pit
It's a
stop.
rest
It's a pit
area.
stop, but it's
Right.
like a pit stop. It's like it's a
Warehouse.
major it's like one of those pit stops where there's an outlet mall. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Well,
or
I
something or like
look up
or a
look up
big
was
like
it
shipping
Grand
warehouse.
Caravansary?
Yeah. Um
Um
and then the main system here has a preceptor archive. It's the sole supplier of something really important that we need to figure out what that is. And I've also added a third thing. It's a trade hub, which of course it is, right? So, this is a pretty crucial world here. It's got a breathable atmosphere. It's got a slightly colder than normal temperature. It's got a human edible biosphere. It's got hundreds of millions of inhabitants, and it's got TL4 plus tech level. Um, and it has a faction that I have at least temporarily named the IMC, the Independent Merchant Consortium, but that can change if we come up with a better name for that. And yeah, so that's kind of what's going on in terms of what we've generated there, right? Um, is there anything that you want to dig into? Because it sounded like you were maybe going to suggest that since this is like a big crossroads, I couldn't tell if you were the suggestion that we go ahead and dig into it, or that we
well, it's
do the other
either way.
sectors first and then see how they influence it,
Yeah, so
right?
that's kind of I'm of two minds, and you hit both of them.
Yeah.
Basically, there's two ways that I would consider approaching which faction to do, and it's do I think that the merchants are incredibly idiosyncratic because they are confronted by other clusters and their ideologies, and therefore they double down on being themselves, which makes them stand apart? Or are they more of a kind of a Creole society where they readily accept and repurpose the cultures around them, the parts that they find beneficial, and thereby they become this really interesting, pastiche, this collage of different parts of the other cultures.
Yeah.
And honestly, you could revisit them. You could say, I want them to be a very specific way, and then you come up with something about, the great work cluster that is really interesting, and you think, well, it would be interesting if that had an effect on the merchants.
Right. Yeah, the way I'm kind of thinking about the merchants in my head right now is that, like, I think that I'm sort of envisioning a very fluid society where people don't, like, there are some permanent residents, but where there's a lot of coming and going. But I'm also sort of envisioning a, like, extremely rigid, like, how do I put this? Like, I'm envisioning the merchant consortium as basically being like, hey, listen, we actually don't care what any of you believe for the most part, right? As long as profits, as long as line goes up, we really don't care about anything else. So, like, you guys can kind of, like, have whatever, and so I'm kind of maybe thinking, like, yeah, there's outposts, like, within this world. There are hundreds of millions of inhabitants. It's a really populous world, right? And I'm thinking that there's
Mhm.
enclaves. Let's go with that. Like, enclaves of people from every other part, right? Kind of like mixing and matching and running into each other. But I think the agenda of the, like, merchant consortium who controls this is just like, line go up. But I also think this is not, like, so there's two things about this, right? One of their things is that they're a sole supplier. So they have something really, really important that basically they're the only ones that have. So other clusters really have no choice but to come to them for whatever this resource is that we can kind of figure out what it is, right? And I think that basically gives them the leeway to kind of be a bit aloof, like,
Okay.
above, like, I think they're
Resistant.
neutral
Yeah.
in that sense. They're like, you guys have your whole holy war thing going on, like, you guys have your whole, you know, corporate thing going on over there. You guys have whatever the hell you have going on over here where you kind of hate each other and have this, like, eugenic cult and this great work and all that shit. We don't really care about that. Like, we have this thing that you all need and so you have to pay us for it, and and other than that, we're kind of like, so as long as that doesn't get disrupted, I think that's my sort of perception of them. But I think it leaves room for this planet to have, like, really kind of incredibly low oversight over a lot of it. It's like maybe these enclaves really are kind of governing themselves to a way. It's like they're delegated to the extent that they don't interfere with line go up. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, what you're referring to is actually very common in human history. Basically, you would have foreign quarters,
Right.
um, where you would allow people to live among uh, either their ethnic or religious, or otherwise, like, subcultural group, where you all gather together because you live in a specific way that's slightly different than other people. So you get your own place to do that.
Yeah.
And historically, I also do want to make a point. um, Humans have never not been surrounded by other people that were probably at least a little bit different from them. And by that, I mean that there has never been a human settlement that we would consider an urban environment, where there weren't multiple ethnic or family groups who had slightly different practices and coexisted despite those. Um, just a little fun urban history fact. So when you're designing a society, especially of humans, uh, it's strange. It would seem strange to me if they were a monoculture, unless they were in a really extreme situation.
Right.
And indeed, trade specifically is about linking various groups together for mutual benefit based on their own distinct specializations. And that's something that we've observed even being enforced as far back as like 4,000 years ago in like the year 2400 BC in Mesopotamia. We saw kings and rulers and the first imperial line of Akkad um, specifically demanding that various villages or city states that they held sway over specialize because it was a way to reduce conflict between neighbors. Kind of the parable of
The
the
hoe and
hoe
the
and the
handle.
handle.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, and that goes back really, really far because we realized that in an economic system and in the idea of the mechanisms of the economy as a way of preserving peace, specialization has been the tool that we've used to do that.
Yeah. So for me here, I think I'm thinking a couple things. One, I think the forward and quarters idea is great. I think the way I'm envisioning this is like there's a higher than average amount of that. Like I think there's like huge enclaves from other factions here. Um and that
What
but
if
it go ahead.
what if they, instead of them being like foreign quarters, what if they were just um like Judge Dredd style like city block skyscrapers that housed individual like populations?
Sure. Well, one thing we haven't really talked much about too is like what is the design of this place that we're looking at. I'm totally open to that idea. I
Sure.
think let's think
Yeah,
too
that's the built
about
environment. Let's
yeah.
focus
So
on
we've
that
got a
later.
cold world. So this is like a snowy. It's not like freezing, frigid everywhere, but it's like colder than normal, right? But another thing I wanted to look at is this sole supplier. This place is the sole supplier of
Yeah. So
something.
what?
The question being what, right? Because I think the
Yeah.
nature of what they're the sole supplier of may have a big impact on their whole deal, right?
So I
Because
played a game recently called Triangle Strategy, which is on Nintendo Switch. It's very fun if you like turn-based tactical RPGs. And essentially, there are three controlling hegemonies that each have a monopoly on a single resource, or typically. Uh, there is a northern faction that has a monopoly on iron. There is an eastern faction that has a monopoly on salt. And there is a central faction which kind of keeps the peace generally throughout half the game. And they have a monopoly on good arable growing land. And none of these factions can really exist without either peacefully trading or dominating the other through war. Um, and I like that they assign these incredibly essential resources to human life: salt, iron for basically industry tools, weapons of war, even um, building, you know, materials, and then you have this place that produces food, but they can't produce food if there's a war going on and people starve. So it could be something as literally as essential as like water, if you
Yeah.
want it to be that
Well,
extreme, or it could be like
so
an
no, they
alloy
can't be the
or
sole supplier of water because we do have several other like this world right here has seagoing cities, right? So it
gotcha.
can't be water.
Well, but
'Cause,
that might not be
fresh water.
processable
Yeah.
into being potable. We
We have
don't
an
know.
oceanic world here. Like there's a lot of water in several different places. I think actually maybe it has something to do with what if this is a place where there's some sort of like life form, like I don't know if it's plant based or even bacterial or fungal or something. But what if it's something that's like really, really important for making like high tech medicines? Like,
Mm, pharmaceuticals.
yeah. So what if there's like, and it's like a raw material that it's like, for instance, I don't know how there's med packs and health packs and stuff like that in this game in like the equipment, and like how that works, right?
Hmm.
Um, actually, let me look at injury, death, and
What if
healing, right? So like, there's I forget what they have. Heal checks, Lazarus patch. Okay, yeah. So a Lazarus patch is like a really important healing device in this system, right?
okay.
Um, so what if there's something that is like really important for making stuff like that like boosts natural healing or is useful for like putting people into like suspended animation so they can heal and things like that, like some kind of either chemical or you know something that they harvest from the like biosphere on this planet
Yeah. I
that's
mean, maybe
like
it's something that like has almost like immortality properties or something. Maybe it could be like some sort of ancient bacteria living, deep within the earth or the planet's core or some such nonsense. Or it could be like some sort of ancient creature that they, suck some sort of fluid out of.
yeah, I think those are all great sci-fi tropes. I kind of like the idea that it's something mass producible, and I don't think that they necessarily mass produce it here, but I think they like it's
Well,
like
prime
if
ingredient or
because maybe I
something.
think
Yeah.
there's like it has to, how do I put this? Like let's imagine like that this medicine, has like a shelf life, right? But like if you freeze if you cryo freeze the main ingredient and ship it to another world, then the pharmaceutical manufacturers on that world can create the medicine and that the shelf life of it like although it only takes about 6 days to get to Star to Star for me, so maybe that doesn't make that much sense. But I kind of like the idea that like they don't necessarily have a big manufactory on this planet where they make medicine necessarily, but they're the only place where you can buy penicillin. You know what I mean? Like so,
Right.
or something like the space sci-fi version of that that's useful to making these like. So it's like everybody has these armed conflicts, right? Or everybody needs medicines and has. So it's like okay,
Maybe it's a secret how they produce this stuff.
yeah. So, but I think it's like a raw material that everyone needs to make some of these like really advanced medicines.
Hmm.
Because it's like every single faction in here is going to need that. And if any faction pisses them off and gets cut off, you know, then
Especially the war cluster.
yeah. And then the other thing is like, oh, well, if they're not like, they don't have the most space, but they have tons of money, but they don't have like the biggest military or the most like resources, but they kind of know, hey, look, if anybody else attacks us, the other factions will have to pitch in and help protect us because we're a crucial resource they need. So they're almost in this like really
Mm.
kind of perfect setup, right?
And they can't really, yeah, that's another way I think is really ingenious that allows them to keep their independence is the fact that all of the other factions wouldn't dare attacking them because they wouldn't want the other factions to take them out.
Yeah. Um so we don't have to name this stuff yet unless you have something like right off the bat that seems.
Well, it's a Lazarus patch, so maybe uh you- we're trying to name this mysterious resource, this
Yeah,
component.
it's a raw material needed to make advanced medical like medicines, pharmaceuticals, stuff like that.
What's oh gosh, what's that thing called? It's like a crook staff with the two serpents
Caduceus?
twining around it. Caduceus? What if we called it something like caduceum or
Caducean. We could use that as as an adjective, like Caducean something. Just give it
all
a
I'm thinking
number,
is
Caduceum 5 or something. I don't know.
yeah. I was thinking like caduceum juice.
Caduceum juice.
I got nothing better than than contributing juice on the end of stuff.
Uh,
Caduceum 5 is way more interesting.
okay, that produces.
And you know what? Actually, the Lazarus Patch and all of this stuff makes me think about the zombies too.
Yeah.
Which there might be some interesting tie-in with that, but that's not the focus right now.
Right. Is the question of like, okay, how did these zombies get here? How did they get made? What's their origin? Very cool. That produces Caducean 5. Okay. We're gonna, instead of medical ingredient, we're gonna call it Caducean 5. And that could change if we come up with something better, but a rare ingredient that is integral to the production of nearly every we'll call it post-tech medicine or medical device.
Medical treatment.
Post-tech medicine, medical treatment, or medical device. Okay, cool. So that gives us a sense. We don't have to decide right this second how it is, acquired. We know we have a cold world here. Let me go look at what does a variable to cold world mean, right?
Yeah.
Temperature. Okay, so variable temperature worlds tend to show a greater distribution of climates than other worlds, either ranging from cold to temperate levels or temperate to hot levels. This may be a climate that changes worldwide when long, slow orbit brings planet into proximity with a stellar primary, or it might be a world that has substantially different climatic zones spread across its surface. The North Pole of one world might be sun-blasted deserts that moderates to a cool, wet equator, or an icy world might be warmed here and there by complex channels of geothermally heated subsurface rivers. Variable temperature worlds tends to have savage weather. Mixing of hot and cold air can send ferocious cyclones, raging hurricanes, yada, yada, yada. So we have temperate to cold. So there are some places in this world then that are,
Livable. Temperate.
temperately livable. And then there's a huge amount of the surface here. It's not like a full-on ice world, right?
Right, but it's just on average colder than like an Earth climate.
Exactly. So, that kind of, I feel like it would be important to do something with the iciness of it, right? So it's like maybe like most of the human habitation is in like the temperate zone because that would make sense, right? But and I mean
Right.
it's a planet of hundreds of millions, which means you could have a few cities of several million, you know. Um and then what if in the more remote and icier region, like I would think that this rare resource is more likely
The
found in those
bad
remote
place.
icy regions, right? So
Yeah.
whether that's of course, that's just what you do. That's the sensible thing, right?
You know that makes me think of this thing called cyanobacteria,
Mm-hmm.
which is found in the Arctic, and it they found stuff they found bacterium, individual bacterium that are literally like thousands and thousands of years old,
Mm-hmm.
and they survived continuously in these geothermal wells in the Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I don't know. That's my real world
Yeah.
inspiration for thinking about the Caduceum 5.
This isn't Terminator 3. Okay. I haven't seen Terminator. I haven't seen any Terminator movie ever, so I'm
Honestly,
not going to
I
catch
don't
that
remember the
reference.
plots to any of the Terminators besides the first one where the Terminator terminates.
Yeah.
Which I assume is the plot of every Terminator, unless I'm
Right.
mistaken.
Yeah, so I do think that could be like maybe there are like alien algae blooms full of cyanobacteria that are like in sort of geothermal vents, but maybe the way that the like tectonics of this planet work, that like it's like maybe it requires kind of a specific situation with like cold water and hot vents. You know what I mean? That's like the more temperate zones, it can't grow because the water's too warm or something.
Or maybe it somehow got isolated, like trapped in whatever it is concentrated in this incredibly harsh environment because it was somehow trapped. Maybe it was trapped there on purpose. Ooh. Um and and only recently, due to like tectonic fissures opening up or something, has anyone discovered this stuff.
Lost planet, biggest lava bugs. I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Daniel. Yeah, well, so another thing that we to take into account is that the timeline, and again, we like don't necessarily have to go with the baseline setting, right? For some of this stuff, the silence after the scream that knocked out all the psionics lasted for about 600 years, right? So from about 2600
Okay.
until 3200, most of the interstellar travel has been down, and then it's only been coming back up in the last, I don't know, let's say 150 years or something. Not again, not relatively speaking, not that long. So if this is the only place where like the post-tech medicine can be made, right? Then I think they've known about it for a while. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like as soon as interstellar travel was reestablished, this place became incredibly important because of it being the only place that had the stuff needed to make this kind of
And you're
modern
talking about like
medicine.
this, that you think this place was inhabited as far back as pre-Scream.
Yeah, I think almost all. I think it's kind of assumed that most of the places are
Oh, okay.
inhabited pre-Scream, but that like this is so we're in the outer rim of the galaxy, so like a lot of the really important pre-tech stuff didn't make its way out here. People were still using spike drives and stuff. Lost Planet game took place on a planet that had big ass lava bugs that fed off geothermal energy. Oh, okay,
Oh, nice.
gotcha. Um, so I mean, there may be some of them that have more recent or that like more recent colonization, right? But I think anything that has tech level 4, any of these like major power centers have probably had societies that have persisted since the
The
Scream,
Scream.
that they survived and are the hubs whereby people are beginning to expand back out again.
Yeah,
That's
that
sort
makes
of my
sense.
take on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
I mean, on a timeline level, I don't really see that conflicting, just because like tectonic stuff does take millennia to resolve.
right.
I mean, that's assuming an Earth scenario.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I don't know. I don't think we're nailing it yet. I like the Caducean 5. I like what it does. In terms of how they get it, I think it comes from somewhere in the ice, and I think that's all we need to necessarily know for now.
Yeah, we might be getting too deep into this.
Yeah.
I think an important part of world building is leaving mysteries unsolved, even as the world builder, because sometimes your players will recommend things that are so much cooler than anything you could
Yeah.
have come up with, and you can
Right.
steal that and then tell them, "Ah, you're so smart because I had already thought of that."
Of course. Um Or sometimes you just come up with the right idea later. And if it's like if you bust your head
Also
against a
true.
given wall, and it's not being productive, my usual advice is just, yeah, all right, so go pick another thing. So we know we have this kind of cold world. They have foreign quarters and or so looking at the foreign quarters idea, you were talking about block wide like skyscraper things. I think maybe that could be, I think that's like the capital maybe has stuff like
Yeah,
that, you know what I mean?
foreign quarters in the classic sense, and when you're talking about how a city is divided, it's literally just a neighborhood, right?
Right.
And we can sort of rethink of we can redefine or maybe loosen the definition of neighborhood in this way by saying like maybe it's more concentrated than like a neighborhood. It's not like a sprawled.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like individual buildings, or maybe they have like some kind of maybe they have like individual starports where they because they use different types of ships or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and so what I'm kind of also thinking is like, you know, we have all of sci-fi trope to play with here, right? So it could be all kinds of like, maybe there are like what if the city is not all one like level? What if there's like plates at different heights and shit? Like we could
Sure.
do all kinds of stuff like that. We have a lot of room to play with. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, I guess what I'm getting at with the foreign quarters thing is that there's like high concentrations of other folks who have a somewhat autonomous kind of political situation within their own group. And there's lots of intermingling and stuff. It's a very like cosmopolitan situation. And it's like there's an overhead merchant consortium who is like, we are going to crack down on any conflict between you guys here, right? It's like a very, I don't care if your two factions are at war. If you fuck around on our turf, we're going to, crack down on you or whatever. But outside of that kind of crap, like we mostly don't care what you do, right? That's sort of how I'm thinking about this. And so it's like like what I'm imagining that does is it means that like everybody in the zone sort of like knows how far they can push it before like the consortium gets involved. And so everyone like rides as close to that line as they can all the time, kind of, if they're in conflict with another
Hmm.
faction, But like everyone's trying not to trip the like big trigger, you know, and get screwed up, right?
Yeah, everyone's riding that line of like scrutiny almost.
Exactly. Because it's like because you have this more powerful but disinterested faction who's like, yeah, like as long as you operate within these parameters that we've set, you can basically be independent. But as soon as you cross certain lines, then we crack down, right? And I think that creates a situation where you could have a really interesting, like, just setup of like if your players get aligned with one faction or another and they're asked to, like there's all kinds of like kind of cool adventure hook opportunities there. Yo, what's up, 5 o'clock Shadow Lord? So I feel like that's I have a sense of what's going on there a little bit. Let's maybe talk about somewhere else for a while. What do you think?
Yeah. Let's spend a little time in the ACE cluster,
Yeah.
talking maybe about one of those worlds or a point of interest,
Yeah. So
perhaps.
I have named the corporation that's sort of in charge there, the ASE Corp, or ACE for short. And the sector is then the ACE cluster, just sort of as a colloquialism. That can all change, I think. Um, their home world, I basically already kind of have a central tension conflict that I am looking to set as sort of the main feature of like a short campaign I want to run.
Mhm.
Basically, my thought with this is that there's like a sort of semi utopian homeworld in that, not like a utopia that I would prescribe to, but basically like the homeworld of this place is, did I give it, what tech level did I give this thing?
Was this the
Um,
one with the highest tech level? The one that had like pre-tech?
where are Oh, did those not save?
The system tags are gone.
Yeah. Well, I've got planet. Oh, okay. Wait. Okay, no, yeah, I've got planet tags, but I don't have planet. Okay, I'm gonna edit this. Atmosphere is breathable. Temperature is temperate. Biosphere is human miscible. Population is hundreds of millions. Tech level is. I'm gonna make this a solid TL4, I think.
What's the highest?
So TL5 is pre-tech.
Got it.
So
So 4 is
that's
kind of the best you'd expect out
yeah.
here in
There's
the
4 and then there's
outskirts.
4 plus. 4 plus means it's post tech, which is post scream tech, with a little bit of pre tech occasionally that still works. And then tech level 4 is like this is fully just modernized. So we're gonna say tech level 4 for now, unless I get a good reason to do something else. This is a cultural power planet. So that I'm thinking that we talked about this a little bit offline. That they have huge like artistic and philosophical influence on the sector, sort of. And I'm thinking that all of their art is like NFT based, basically. This is kind of a weird pitch, but I think they have this like culture, like they produce everyone. It's like a media planet almost in a way, right? Where like
Okay.
PR is crazy important and like how well given like corporate art products do is really important, and they export that stuff throughout the sector, although it's probably not the only thing they export. Um, but but they really, really care about their image. And I think their main planet is this like utopian ideal, but like it's kind of a lie, right? So it's like it's, boulevards of beautifully manicured trees and like, beautiful sci-fi buildings and stuff like that, right? But I think it's all kind of made possible by their like um exportation of like work. I think that like the home planet dominates, like I think there's an asteroid mining facility, and I think maybe they dominate some of these other systems a little bit in this little small zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um and I think they use that to disguise the fact from the people on the homeworld that like all of the luxury that they experience on the homeworld comes at the expense of this other stuff.
Okay.
Let's see. 5 o'clock Shadow Lord says, you know how LA is with fakeness and hyper competitive networks and stuff like that. What if we did maybe not NFT based? What if we did like a social capital system where it's like you are a stock and like people
Yikes.
buy stock in other people and stuff like that, like where like everyone is a product, or
I
like every single person is like a sole proprietorship, like publicly traded product. Not in the sense
so
of
I
like being like not in the sense of like their labor is being bought, but in the sense of like people have ownership stakes in different, and like people's personal brands go up and down. I don't know.
So one of the things that I've been trying to do for my own sort of fantasy RPG setting, the Beast Wilds, is to establish a more well understood cyclical economy, and also the specialization of local geographies, so that I can understand in a grander sense how they might affect the global geopolitical landscape, which is a really wordy way of saying I've been trying to figure out how money works in my fantasy imagination land so that when people go to war, I can make up cool stuff. And one of the things that I've done is I have an entire society based off of indebtedness, uh, where it's kind of similar what you're describing, where each individual person is essentially like their own product, and they're taking bets kind of against themselves. This is Pixel. You would know where this is. This is Jeffrey City.
Yeah.
Um, and so each person is essentially there's it's a tiered society. Whew, we're getting into the weeds, but basically there is the second and third class citizens are essentially just walking loans, and they take out loans on themselves that they can never hope to pay back because that is the only way to live in that society.
Yeah. Yeah, so with this, I'm kind of thinking like that like everybody's brand image is a product. And so I
So
guess I'm kind of
we're talking
imagining
about
like
a world of
a world of like social
content
media
creators.
influencers. Yeah, right. And that like
Jeez.
that
Oh
they're
my goodness.
and like
That
so
you're describing hell.
I really am unboxing videos and like
How
all
much do you pay
that
for your
kind of stuff.
apartment?
Yeah,
That's a
and
really
like
nice car.
but that they're like and like that one of their major exports is this kind of like content, right? So it's like if you're a weapons manufacturer in the Great Work cluster and you can get a social media influencer from the Ace cluster to like do a review of your product and have it be positive, like you can boost your sales 500% or something, and that there's this kind of like probably slightly corrupt relationship between like influencers and corporations and stuff, and that the home world is this like hyper idyllic place. And I think to a certain extent, like some of the people I guess it gives us a central tension, right? Some of the people in the home world know about what has to happen in the other parts of the sector in order to like support their lifestyle, and some of them probably don't, right? And so like there's a degree of propaganda, Brondo, yeah, there's a degree of propaganda that goes into like maintaining at least a bubble of deniability, if not a bubble of ignorance, and there's this like it's huge PR and stuff like that. I think that's, I don't know, I think and so yeah, and one of the reasons this is kind of funny, so the ASC corporation that I named is named for its founders. I wrote this down. It's probably lame, and when you hear it, you're gonna want to change it, but I might leave it. It is the Alton Seville Iman Corporation, and
okay.
it kind of works. If you look at Alton Seville and Iman, it's the All Seeing Eye Corporation. And with the social media being like voluntary panopticon. It's like,
wow.
Okay. Maybe it's too on the nose, I don't know, but it's Ace Corp for short, right? So,
I would have just called it Panoptics or something.
Panoptics, yeah. Yeah, I think I kind of like that idea where their whole thing is like and there's like tickers that go by with like people's names and like plus and minus 2 or 3% or like that, you know what I mean?
Are they all wearing Google Glass?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know if they have. It's quite like that. But I'm like, but there certainly is like a stock exchange somewhere on this world where like people's names are and stuff, and like, and it's of course it's not gonna be every name, but like the biggest name people have like tremendous clout, and there obviously would be some relationship between like smaller people would have to join larger people's communities and stuff,
right. We're
and you'd have these almost like
economy.
Yeah.
This is a stock market for attention.
Yes. Right.
Right. So you have these smaller subsidiaries, clusters of people who can sort of bundle their attention and that of their viewers, and they can invest in like the PewDiePies of Utopia.
Exactly. Right. Individuals' brands are publicly traded.
You should absolutely call investing rating.
Rating is like a Twitch rate, or rating is in like this is rated AAA?
Oh, rating is in it as like a Twitch raid. Like I'm gonna raid Scarlo the Cragglefo, and me and my followers we're raiding And that's in them investing the attention
Yeah.
of anyone who will listen to them into that person.
Okay, so maybe.
That's just a joke.
The
It's not a good joke.
That's all right. So okay, so here's the other thing that we have to reckon with is the relationship of all these people to Ace Corp, right? So obviously Ace Corp started out as a social media company, I think.
It's the algorithm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I like that. And but I think it's a company and it's people who it's like everyone is vying for like being the top dog on this Ace Corp play. It's like Twitch, right? Which is owned by Amazon.
Right.
Hi Twitch, hi Amazon, hey Jeff Bezos, suck my dick. Okay, so anyway,
Fuck you.
fuck you, motherfucker. If you're listening to this right now, fuck you. Anyway, but no, my point being like, everyone's vying for like top dog status and vying for attention on getting views and getting investment and stuff like that. But all of that is like subsidiary to Ace Corp, right? Ace Corp is like, yeah, even when you're unsuccessful, even when you're successful, like we make money either way, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Boys, where the PR firm company basically runs the military industrial complex. Yeah, I have not watched The Boys because I don't have Amazon Pies because fuck you, Jeff Bezos. But yes,
Right.
Basically yes. Okay, so I like
Feel
that.
free to rewind like 2 minutes if you need to catch up.
Okay, so Ace Corp. Okay, so started as social. I gotta write this stuff down or I'll forget it. Media company. Responsible for Twitch/YouTube esque attention economy on quote utopian end quote homeworld. Let's see. PR firm responsible for military industrial complex. I kind of like that because one of the things about this is that Ace Corp is a regional hegemon in addition to being a cultural power, which means that they do have like a strong like military wing. And I think that part of the way I'm thinking of that is like it's the arm that keeps all of the resources flowing that make this sort of faux utopian, possibility, like lifestyle possible on the main homeworld, right? And they sort of like hide and export all of that human suffering into the other places in the sector, right? Or in the cluster, really. So yeah, how are we feeling about that like design? What do we had talked about having the whole economy run on like that their main currency is kind of NFT, like cryptocurrency based. Which I kind of still
with
like.
simians.
Yeah. Yeah, the Sims. The money is simians or Sims. And that all of their art and stuff is NFT based. I think we can still run with that because I like this. If everybody is a personal brand, right? Then the content that they release is their art and they mint NFTs of all of it. So like being able to say that you own NFTs of other people's like, oh, hey, do you remember when, Jackboot 69420
like a clip?
Yeah, like, hey, do we all remember that time that Jackboot 69420 like was doing a review on those grenades and blew his own hand off? Like, I own the NFT of that would be like a major social status thing. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
God, this is horrible. Okay.
Yeah, this is
NFT
pretty awful to think about.
Based art as the basis for cryptocurrency based economy. It's like having intellectual rights to Leroy Jenkins. Exactly. If you could own the NFT of the first time Leroy Jenkins ever Leroy Jenkins because he did it on stream because everyone streams everything they do all the time constantly, that would be this world. And it would be like the most, like you'd be an instant billionaire, right? If you, let's see, Gearfried, take a look at Pentex from World of Darkness, subtract evil part, have a company that's part of everything and everything. Nasty deeds, yeah. Okay, so I'm liking this. I think those random bits of world building that we were doing kind of fit together, right? And then I think that's the thing is that, like, I think Ace Corp pays people in Sims, right? In Simians.
I think we decided
And
that. Yeah.
but Ace Corp does business in galactic credits or in like sector credits or something like
right,
that.
it's company script.
Yes, right. So it would be like Twitch paying you in bits instead of money, right?
Right,
But that
and
you
then
can trade
and
bits
then
with other
telling you
streamers
you
and
can
stuff.
go
Yeah,
to the Amazon grocery store to buy your food with bits
right.
because you don't
Exactly.
have credits to go to literally
So
any
I'm gonna write
other
that
store.
down. Ace Corp pays people in Sims, but it does business in I'm gonna call them sector credits for now, but I'm gonna put a thing, new name needed. We'll come up with something better for that. There could be factions of like jackass type content creators who are willing to risk life and limb. Yeah, and I think that it's like in the main home world, most of what they do is this like utopian influencing. It's your fitness, influencers, your Instagram fitness people. These are the like organic. This is my blender where I mix organic slurry that makes me slim and beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of like, we only eat kale paste, like everybody's like that, where they're all like,
Are you still using an inferior skin removal cream?
right.
Well, I've peeled all of my skin off with Glorbos.
Yeah. Why do I feel Soylent Green? Yeah. So like that's kind of a corporate town, like how Walt Disney created Disney World, where Utopia work and live the scene part, earning Disney credits. Yeah, it's basically kind of like a whole planet of that. And the vibe of like what everyone is doing. It's so instead of like I think in the farther reaches of the cluster, maybe there are more of their like we're mercenary military influencers, but I don't think they let that stuff to the home world. You know what I mean? I think it is that like Disney World fakeness of like, this is a highly curated experience, right? And so while that other kind of content does sell and does really well, we only let people do that like not on the home world, because the home world has this like, so Dimension 20 did a season called Starstruck Odyssey based on Brandon Lee Mulligan's mother's comic book series that she collaborated with a guy named Daniel Kaluuya, I guess, and called Starstruck Odyssey. Her series is called Starstruck. Their Dimension 20 actual play is called Starstruck Odyssey. And they kind of do a like sci-fi Disneyland thing that I don't want to just rip off, right?
Right.
This is basically
Uncle
okay.
Bob's
Here's the vibe.
Fantasyland.
This is like Uncle Bob's Fantasyland. This is the vibe in my brain. Is like
This is like
a whole world where everything looks like an Apple store and everyone is an Instagram fitness influencer, basically, kind of, right? Where like that's kind of what people are doing. A planet-sized version of the Truman Show, and everyone's unaware. People are sort of unaware of like certain aspects of it, I think.
But they're bought in. It's not that they're unaware.
They're bought in.
Bought into
and they're
thing.
unaware of some of it, right? So, for instance, one of the main, and we'll get into this in a minute, one of the main other faction in this zone is the UMF. And the UMF is the like United Mining, it's the UFM. It's the United Federation of Miners. Okay. So there's an asteroid belt that is being mined by this system, right? Like that by Ace Corp. They own a mining colony on this asteroid where conditions are horrible, right? And so those miners are trying to unionize. Well, on Ace Corp world, like they don't want people to know what the conditions are like in that mine, because some of those influencers might see an opportunity to be like, oh, if I take like a big moral stand on this, I could massively increase my brand proposition, right? Or they just think it's the right thing to do, whatever, right? So like there is a degree of like keeping them in the dark about the kind of exportation of oppression necessary to maintain their perfect little bubbles. But the people aren't that interested in breaking their perfect little bubbles because most of them kind of like the bubble, right? Now there are people who are going to be not successful in the system and therefore won't like the bubbles all that much, right? But I think that's like marginalized, and it's like there's a tremendous propaganda effort made into keeping people on board with the bubble. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
I think you're making sense, but I have known you for many years.
That's true. I bet there are desperate people hired to sneak into the plant to pull publicity stunts and strong arm military that cracks down on them. Yes, I think that's probably right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I feel like I have a pretty good sense of Ace Corp. So they know the thin veil, but there's what's underneath. They don't really know. Basically, they know the public face are blind to the parts that make it up. Trying to get into this idea of love, world, and society building. Yeah, I think they basically it's willful ignorance to a certain extent, right? It's like most of the people don't know and don't want to know. Some of the people know and don't care, right? And then the opportunity is there for the players to show up and like make people aware in a way that those who can pretend not to know can no longer pretend not to know, and those who don't know but would care now would know. And so that would make them an enemy of this main faction, but could begin to unravel some of these things, right? So I think that's interesting, and I like that. And I will just go ahead and say they own their happiness. They don't care what actually makes it right. Some of them don't. So, and because again, I don't think they're all one thing, right? This is a whole planet of people. So some of the people, like, and I guess like here's the it's like this is a central tension of this planet, right? Some of the people know and don't care. Some of the people don't care and don't don't know and don't care that they don't know. And like some people probably know but like feel like they can't publicly care because it would be ruinous for their number go down, number go up personal stock brand viewer ratings or whatever, right? So like there's a lot of different ways that people can relate to this, but this is like a defining feature of this zone, right? And I think that's interesting. It gives us opportunity to show those different perspectives through different characters, including possibly some of the player characters if they're interested in engaging with it, right? And make the characters, really kind of pop off the screen, page, whatever. You get it. Okay. So wow, we've been doing this for a little over an hour.
Yeah.
I like this. I like what we've got on Ace Corp so far. I like the idea. I kind of in my head am seeing this like sci-fi utopian city in my brain. I'm seeing like, again, it looks like an Apple store, right? Everything is like sleek and
Clean,
like white and
edges.
clean and gray, but there's some natural wood in there. There's like a perfectly manicured boulevard of trees. It's that like kind of sci-fi vibe. If the government predicts someone's social stock going down to the bed, they start sending agents to follow them so they don't disrupt things. I don't know, maybe. So I kind of feel that. And that explains a couple of things. Here's what we've done, folks. We've explained the cultural power aspect of this, right? They have huge cultural influence over the rest of the sector as like the media corporation of the sector. This is your Disney, right? Except not quite such a focus on like family programming necessarily. And like everyone in the planet is kind of involved for the most part because they have to be, because that whole society is like about that, right? We sort of have alluded to mercenaries. Like these are the folks who are required to exert the influence necessary to prop up this homeworld on the rest of this cluster, right? And we've talked, and it's the regional hegemon that these people basically have technological sophistication and national resources to kind of influence these other things. Okay. I feel good about that. How do you feel? I know I've been talking for like a hot minute, but I kind of got on a roll.
No, I like that. We have a facade of utopia, which is hidden by a crushing system of dependent entirely on the attention of the people who subsist within it.
Yeah. So let's talk
Right.
about some of those people. That is my next
Yeah.
step, is let's look at this asteroid belt. So this is an asteroid belt with grizzled belter mine laborers where they're being crushed by Ace Corp quotas. There are a couple of things in this asteroid belt. There's a refueling station that has extortionist corporate minions, and some foreign saboteurs. And on the asteroid bait, we have wage slave corporate miners. And I actually have the situation here is that the miners are going on strike and they're trying to blockade scabs and police from entering the mines. And that the faction is the UFM, the United Federation of Miners. So that's kind of the tension that I want to draw forward when I run the campaign. I have plans to do it a couple different ways, and I don't necessarily want to talk about them on stream in case any of my players go back and listen to this. So I actually don't know that I need much more work on this. I do say, why don't we go ahead while we're at it? We've named Ace Corp. Why don't we try and name these planets and this asteroid belt? Could have dirty secrets
Yeah.
where they seem to pay them off reality, bring them in on something more without majority knowing, keep others aligned. Yeah. So let's talk about this planet. So we have a couple of things to name, and we actually can talk about adding points of interest because I think a lot of this early stuff is going to happen in this system. So I want to add a couple points of interest before they go interstellar. But we've got the system itself, we've got the planet, we've got the asteroid belt, the asteroid base, the refueling station, and then anything else we want to add. So there's like 5 things to look at here, right?
That's a lot of stuff, and
It really is.
That's just one system.
Yeah. Well, because it's and some of it'll be easy. Like we could easily name the base on the if it's the only mining base on the asteroid belt, then you can just name it the same thing as the asteroid belt and add mining base to it. You know what I mean? So
Right.
corporate espionage is a typical Tuesday on this world. Yeah. So I guess let's start with the system. Why don't we take the system name from one of the founders of the corporation?
I was gonna say that's a great way to do it. Let's think about some personalities, some corporatist,
Yeah.
Bezos types, and let's start
Right.
naming stuff after.
Yeah. So I have come up with, again, we came up with 3 names, Alton, Seville, and Iman, right? I think the Alton system feels good to me. What do you think?
Yeah. I like Alton. Yeah.
Oh, it would help if I spelled it right. The Alton system. Okay. So we have the Alton system. And so we also have the planet and the asteroid belt to deal with. So the
Maybe
star
we
is
should-
called. So go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, what are some good sources of names for celestial bodies? We've got like Greek and Roman pantheons. Maybe we could have come up with a name that's similar, that sounds like some sort of like um almost like a religious belief, or a made up character, or an aspirational hero or some kind.
Yeah. Let's see. I think part of the issue with pulling straight from Greek and Roman pantheon for planet names is that all of our damn planets are named for
Well,
Greek
that's
and
what
Roman,
I'm saying,
right?
is maybe we could pick something else, like if we want to steal from actual human
Yeah.
history, then there are many pantheons of deities or creatures or otherworldly spirits that we could pull
Ooh.
from.
Okay.
Or we could make up a name.
I think we can do some world building here. So we have these
Okay.
3 individuals, Alton, Seville, Iman, right?
Hmm.
So I think maybe Alton is like the person. So I think let's talk about the history of this um, game a little bit. We're not going to go super in depth. Broad story here for those of you who missed the previous episode of this. Um, Early in the 2100s or something like that, I think it is. Some crazy dude invents space flight, which involves these spike drives that shunt ships into metadimensional space where time and distance are different, allowing you to travel faster than light. It takes you about 6 days to travel from one of these stars to another, representing countless light years of space between the stars. And then setting off a wave of human expansion. Eventually, some of the kids of the people who travel in metadimensional space all the time, or some of the kids who are traveled through metadimensional space, begin to develop psionics, where they channel metadimensional energy through their own brains, giving them psychic powers. In the lore of the game, the psychic powers burn up their brains and drive them crazy and stuff. I'm not really going to run with that. I don't really care much about it, but eventually they develop psionic tech. People learn how to control the psychic powers to not destroy their own brains, and then later develop Psytech, which is psychic technology, allowing them to make things like jump gates, which require, hundreds of psychics working in unison to make these massive gates where you can travel even farther, even faster in metadimensional space with even bigger ships, creating a whole new wave of expansion. Humans get like 100 light years from the Earth and stuff like that, and forming these colonies and stuff out there. And then there's this freak event called the Scream, where a wave of energy rips through metadimensional space, kills all the psychics, basically, and isolates all the worlds, which causes societal collapse of basically the entire human empire, because none of the jump gates work anymore. So all the core worlds pretty much die off because most of them had specialized to the point that they can't support themselves anymore. And now that the jump gates are down, they can't get stuff that they need. It's a big mess. And the rim sectors, which is where we kind of are in this, they fare better because they don't have as much of the pre-tech, sci-tech technology that requires a bunch of psychics working together to work. And so they're usually a little more self-sufficient. So that 600 years later, which is when the game takes place, they are now beginning to kind of like re-up and like spin society back up. Okay, so I think the names of some of these systems, point of that whole rant, the names
Hmm.
of some of these systems come from when they were first discovered pre-Scream, right?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I agree.
so I think that's where Alton, Seville, and Iman come from, or at least Alton comes from, right? The Seville Iman part may come in later, post Scream. So all of that is to say, what if Alton is the person who like discovered or maybe first settled or led the first colony to this star, right? And their family is still
Hmm.
really, really important. And then they're at some point down the line, you know, helped found this corporation. But what if the guy like named the main planet where they were going to build the colony after his wife or something? You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah,
Like
I
that's
I
kind of what
call
I'm. Like, it's
this
a long ass rant.
Maryland.
Yeah, exactly. A long ass rant to get to that proposition, which is let's think about Alton and what he would want to name this thing after a wife or a child or I don't know, a favorite comic book character. I don't know, something about this guy, right? That sort of the vibe of it still trickles down. Um the Alton Expanse, the Alton Cluster, the Alton Passage, Alton Euphorian. Euphorian's not bad actually, given the vibe. Also, 5 o'clock said Alton transferred his bane to an immortal computer, started an alternate operating system, tracks everyone and everything. I don't know, maybe I'm actually because we actually have
Oh,
a hive mind
that's the Howard
unbraked
House.
AI in a different system here. I don't know if that's related to him or not, but we do have one of those. So I don't want to put one on this planet because we've got one over here. Anyway, what were you saying, Beast?
Oh, I was saying the classic New Vegas Howard House situation.
Right. Um So yeah, we've got this. Alton is the last name. Um, and I think he's the one who gets to name this planet, right? So I'm trying to think about like what's this guy like. I think starting a he's starting a colony in a rim world. I think maybe he's ideologically motivated. Maybe he's like, and I think maybe we can begin to seed some of the like cultural stuff that's still going on with him, right? So maybe he's not the media obsessed one, because why would you go way out in the boonies to like start a media company, right? Maybe he's the one who's about the the best life, like that utopian impulse towards self perfection that is still rampant in this place. Maybe that's like his deal, right? Like the thing that leads to everyone basically being like fitness influencers and beauty influencers and all that stuff, right? Maybe he's very much about like self improvement as the aesthetic, and we're gonna build our whole society based on, you know,
Gotta
that as
be
like a guiding principle.
me.
So like, what would a guy like that name his uh name a planet that he's in charge of naming?
Altania.
Let's
Um,
see. I almost feel like it should be like beauty or perfection, but like,
like an ideal.
yeah, something like that. But like, I don't know.
Excelsior.
Yeah, right. Um,
um, hmm.
what's hang on.
See, you're a much more serious world builder than I am.
Yeah.
I tend to make most of my world building like an inside joke. Which not to say that you haven't thrown
Because
plenty
I
of
did,
those
yeah.
in,
The All Seeing Eye Corporation is definitely.
but
Uh,
right. But even my serious characters tend to be based on something kind of silly. Um, like my tragic. I had a tragic character, the Abbot Dubel, who passed away in my last campaign. Spoiler. Um, and his entire thing, his literally his entire character is all inside jokes and puns on Belgian beer, which is it's basically he's my love poem to Belgian beer, and he's dead now. So and
R.I.P.
I also
Belgian
don't
beer.
drink that much.
Yeah.
Um,
I like where you're going with aesthetic and stuff. Aesthetica,
hmm.
but I don't want it to be quite that on the nose. I want like one more little thin veil of deniability. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. You want it. You don't want the double entendre. You want the reference to the
what
double
about
entendre.
Asteria? Aesteria.
I love it. It's great. It rolls off the tongue. It sounds sinister, but also aspirational. It
And if I
sounds
don't put the H in there, I don't think people will make the connection to aesthetics like AESTH. I think
right,
of it, yeah,
like Asteria instead of Asteria.
exactly. Yeah,
I love it.
I
You're
think
getting a
that's
little
where
bit
we're
of
at.
like astral. You're getting a little
Yeah,
bit of like ancestry. A little
yeah.
bit of
Yeah, and
mystery.
Gearfried said Altonius Asteria, and I think like between you saying that and 5 o'clock Shadow Lord saying Aesthetica, I think I sort of like globbed those together. And was like, what if we did both of those, but not quite? And I think we got there. Okay. Um, and then we've got this asteroid belt. Um, let's
Let's
see.
name. I feel like we should name the asteroid belt after a negative character or personality in this world.
Yeah,
So maybe one of the other guys, and founders of Ace Corp maybe he was like the odd man out, and like he started the company, but he was murdered immediately because nobody liked him, or some such.
I so sort of how I'm thinking of the Seville and Iman. I'm thinking that like after the scream, as the society is like spinning itself back up into interstellar travel, right? I
Mhm.
think that like Seville and Iman come along and join Alton and make the corporation, because I think the Alton family like is kind of the top dog family on the world. But I think
Mhm.
after the scream, there's like instability, right? And I think they join forces with these two other powerful families. So maybe you're right. Maybe one of these other families is important because of their control of the belt and the mining and the stuff,
You know
right?
what I was thinking? Maybe one of those founders actually comes from the merchant cluster originally, and maybe they were the connection that allowed the corporation, or gave the corporation the logistical means in order to distribute.
Maybe. Could be.
Or,
That
maybe he was the first person to figure out how to navigate the belt.
yeah, maybe. Um, also 5 o'clock
Like,
Shadow Lord said the Gucci belt. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that was like my first thought was like, can I make a pun about actual belt companies? But I don't think I'm smart enough to do that because I don't know anything about, because again, I don't want to, because we did like, it's like Asteria, right? Like I don't want it to be quite the Gucci belt. I want it to be something like 2 steps down and shifted a little to the left. You know what I mean? But I also like the idea of pulling from one of these
what if
founders,
it's
you know,
what if it's something like Sora's Folly?
Sora's Folly.
Sora, of course, the Kingdom Hearts character who famously wears way too many
Too many
belts.
belts, of course. Well, no. What if we called it the Lulu, with the Lulu skirt? If that's what we're going with, uh, of course, the whole skirt is made
Oh
of
my
belts.
goodness. Our
No,
entire dress, right.
yeah,
Um,
no, I think that's a little. Um,
that's we're digging too deep into this one joke. It's getting
yeah,
too far.
I like the nickname of belt, like the trail or something.
Trail. Hmm.
Of a nickname of belt, like trail or something. Well, let's see. I mean, we can also pull from like the Versamani belt.
Like
We can also pull from like other sci-fi properties. Like for instance, like what's the Kessel Run is like a trip through a given asteroid belt, right? So there you could use run, you could or like ways that we actually name asteroid belts IRL.
right.
Um,
All right, let's learn about asteroid belts.
right? Okay, asteroid belt name generator. All right, what you got for me, internet?
Hmm. Hmm. Kuiper belt, scattered disk
Okay, I don't
objects,
think that.
set
I don't feel like
noise.
that's gonna
Hmm.
work for me. Meteor names. Okay, I don't. I don't. Asteroid belt creator. No, that's like a program. I don't. That's not. The
What if the
something
belt
expanse.
used
Something expanse is not bad.
what if the belt used to be a moon?
Okay.
And that moon is clearly now in many more pieces than it used to be.
Uh huh.
And we call it something that references that, like
Yeah,
the moon's
fracture
name.
something.
Or like splinters, or
Ooh, what if
um
we called it the Iman fracture? What if he blew up the moon?
ooh, what if he blew up the moon?
What if they blew
Freaking
up the
Iman.
moon? Okay.
Oh, here's a world building tip for everyone, and this is coming from firsthand experience. If you want to make a cool world, you got to fuck up your moon.
Okay.
That's like, look,
The
it from the Beast School of
Iman
World Building.
fracture.
I have three things for all of you would be world builders. All right. Number one, are there ghosts? Huge, huge. Trust me. Number two, uh, I usually like to pick either a preferential color or number, which has some sort of significant meaning. Um, and this is a obviously there you're not going to make an entire setting that's monochrome. That's kind of dumb. So use this for your focused factions. If you want to set someone apart from something else, associate them with a color and or a number, like blue 2. Everything about them comes in pairs for whatever reason, and it's always blue associated. Maybe it has water or something, sky, it doesn't matter. And then the third one, of course, is fuck up your moon.
Yeah. Where's my note? Okay, there we go.
Cookie crumble. I like the cookie crumble.
That's funny. The Milky Way and the cookie crumble, the shard. Okay, I like the Iman fracture. I don't know if anyone else likes it, but I'm sticking with Iman fracture on this one. I do appreciate you guys participating. It is helpful. Okay. And then the asteroid base, where they actually do the mining. I think it's just called maybe something like EF13 for Iman fracture object 13. So you know what I mean? Something that's based on that. What do we think?
Yeah. I mean, it's Caduceus 5 all over again, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, I think EF13 works. I'm gonna stick with that.
This is your pro tip for naming things in a sci-fi setting. Just put a number on the end.
Iman schism, late idea. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with fracture. For some reason, I like it. Okay, so we've got the asteroid base EF13. This is the site where the miners are trying to unionize, forming the UFM. They have blockaded it. The refueling station can be, let's see. Is there something we can do with Ace? Like call it the ace in the hole or something. I don't know. Maybe that's too lame. The ace up the sleeve. That would be like a casino.
What about like you could call it something like Solo, but it's an acronym.
You build a lot for Starfinder. Nice. Solo. Yeah.
Uno. Prima.
Okay. Prima Station. That's not bad.
It's not terrible. I've named a few things in my time.
Okay. All right. Great. So we have kind of our main. We have the Alton system. It has one main planet, Asteria. It has an asteroid belt called the Iman Fracture, which is, and I can just like the news thing, unrest on Asteria as the nearby asteroid belt, of the Alton system, the Iman Fracture is dealing with like I don't know, I can hear it.
Terrified miners trapped on Prima Station.
Yeah, travelers to Prima Station, be careful. Or a travel. There it is. A travel advisory. Has been issued for Prima Station, as
the Iman fracture has been agitated, and several loose objects may be hurtling towards it at rapid speed.
Some places get nasty nicknames by the locals. Yeah, makes sense. Very cool. Okay, so I think that's like the main sort of political stuff going on in the Alton system. I think the next thing we should look at, maybe, if you have time, you probably only have a couple minutes, I'm assuming. I don't think you want to be up too late here, right?
I got 15, 20 minutes.
Let's I can see colloquialisms for these locations. Yeah, that could be really cool. I definitely agree. I think let's look at System 14. System 14 is the link to System 16, which is the trading outpost where any stuff that is exported or imported from the merchant consortium to the I called this the ACE cluster. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it as the ACE cluster. From the merchant consortium to the ACE cluster, is going to come from this outpost to this star because it's the closest one and is really the only one that's like reachable, right? And you need like a slightly better than average ship to even make that jump. So,
Right.
let's deal with this one. Now, this system has a single planet that has like a TL1 plant, like tech level. TL1 is like medieval. So the
Nice.
folks here are like a, they're not like a Stone Age world, but they're like a primitive world, right? They don't have like modern tech. And they also have a huge population, not hundreds of millions, but several million inhabitants. So it's a pretty well inhabited world, but it's very cold.
Hmm.
Um, so is this just like oh, what's the thing I'm searching for? Is this just like Beowulf world? Like what are we doing here?
Maybe. I mean, I would be so down for
Mm,
that sort of a a a dark age Scandinavia style culture where uh regional warlords exist
yeah,
in longhouses.
right. Well, and the other tag we have here is ritual combat. Also, 5 o'clock Shadow Lord asked if we want to tie in the psychic factor for this system. Actually, the next system over has the only psionics academy in the sector, and I think that's crucial too. Because in the cis setting, and I don't know that I really want to lean into this, TBD, but in the setting,
Mm,
psionics have to be trained by other trained psionics in order to use their powers. Otherwise, they basically burn their own brains out and become either vegetables or lunatics. Um,
yeah,
and
not great.
yeah, it's just not a piece of world building I'm super a fan of. I understand why they did it. If you're gonna have these crazy powers compared to other people, there's like a penalty for it, but it's just not something that I want to roll with. Um, but so I kind of have something psionic going on in this cluster. So I don't, there may be feelings about psionics on this planet, but we have this psionics academy right here. But instead of making it like burn out your own brain, it could just be that you need a trained psionic to teach you how to use the stuff to be able to really use it effectively, or that it's like really, really hard to figure out on your own. And I think I like that better than just like having it drive you crazy or kill you or make you a vegetable. I'm not a big fan of that world building, but it still makes sense that there would be something like psionic academies that teach people how to use these things. Um,
Maybe you need other psionics to unlock your psionic potential. Maybe it has something to do with not necessarily um, that it's difficult or impossible to do it by your own because of you accessing your own stuff, but maybe it has to be unlocked by another person.
yeah, that is not the worst possible thing. The only question
Eh,
then becomes, how did the first people get it, right? So
right.
we got to
Well,
have an
it
answer for
but
that.
we don't have to answer that, do we? Mysteries are allowed, in world building.
They are, except I think in it's like the advent of psionics is a documented historical fact.
Right. And then the scream happened.
Sort of like how in Dune they have rituals for the psychic people, and so yeah, I don't know. We'll keep thinking at it. That might be the route we
Yeah,
go.
it
Um,
doesn't have to be canon, just a possibility.
but let's try this system is kind of important, but I don't think there's that much going on here. There's certainly no major factions or anything. So let's just try and like knock this one out real quick. We have
Yeah.
a refueling station. This refueling station is actually really important because it is the place where people are coming and going, right? From the ACE system, ACE cluster to the merchant consortium, right? But the world itself actually is kind of a backwater that no one cares about, right? So I almost think naming this refueling station is more important than naming the other stuff in the system. Um, maybe let's cause I like jump. I think we should have jump in there. Like jump beta or omega jump, or like maybe not go with Greek letters, but like cuz this is the leapfrogging point to the rest of the sector for them, right? Um
Hmm.
This sector, they train psychic powers, meaning they have a school for it. Yes. It's presumed, Gearfried, in the baseline of this setting, it's actually presumed that every sector has at least one psionic academy in it. Because of the way psionics works in the base of the Stars Without Number setting, I don't necessarily like how psionics works in the baseline setting, so we're probably going to change it for our sector and just say to hell with it. But a lot of the there's not a lot of mechanics associated with it, so it would be pretty easy to change, and I'm just not the biggest fan of the flavor. But yes, it is baseline assumed that there is a psionic academy, and in this sector, that academy randomly was generated on System 8 in grid point 0902. Dunamis is a Greek philosophical concept meaning power, potential, or ability. Okay. I will make a note of that just in case we want to use it. I appreciate that. But right now we're actually focusing in. I think we've gotten a little in the weeds on the psionic stuff because what I'm actually looking at is the system
Naming the
next
fueling
door.
station.
In the system next door, which is the one that has almost nothing important in it except this one refueling station that is basically like the jump point to get from this system, which has a piddly little backwater planet and then a big ass station. Right, low tech planet will be right from underground smuggling, etc. Yeah, I think so too. I also think that the Alton system harvests workers from there and stuff. Like there's this ritual combat thing. Okay, let's get into this real quick. I know we don't have a lot of time. The Alton planet is also one of its tags. It's famous for its mercenaries. And I think it's kind of like the Dune idea of the Sardaukar, where they sort of rule over this shitty planet and they have this ritual combat culture and stuff. And they take the best ones and make them their mercenaries. So I think that's what's going on with this planet slightly. But this refueling station.
Why not call it something based on that then, like knife point jump? Or
Well, I kind of think because of the PR obsession of the Alton, I don't know. Maybe not jump. I don't know. But anyway, point being, because of the PR obsession of the Alton, I don't think they want to broadcast what they do on this planet, even if it's kind of like an open secret. So I don't know that they name it Knife Point Jump.
why don't you call it skip then? Because anyone who is going to the ACE cluster, the Alton system for business or whatever, they're not using it to land, they're using it to skip over the planet.
Yeah. Well, I'm also thinking you could put a
maybe like a little arena where people can watch the goings on the planet.
I think that could be a thing that watching gladiator stuff. I
Gladiator,
also think what if it's like a casino, what if there's kind of like a whole deal about it? What if it's I'm thinking to Starstruck Odyssey, right? What if it's like a mix between Rec 97 and Las Vegas? You watched the whole of Starstruck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what if it's kind of it's like a bit I almost think like Rec 97. Like what if it's like a rec station, but not
right, where it's kind of it's in a place where there isn't a lot of scrutiny and it's a go between, so people can go there to have a bender and then go to the next place.
And I think what if it's a place where it's intentionally used as a buffer to keep some of the vice off of Alton and off of Asteria. They're like, yeah, if you want to go gamble and do drugs and crazy shit, how about you go out to, Big Skip Station or whatever the fuck we want to call it, right? And then you can do whatever out there.
Well, it's not really a skip anymore, is it? It's more of a diversion.
Like a hub. Maybe, yes, I think something station. I think it's called a refueling station. I think this is really, maybe I should change this to just a space station. Yeah, just a deep space station that is gonna sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Double as a refueling spot, let's see. Edit. Kansk 1. What if it's? I mean, I don't know. Gateway Station is 2. No.
I mean, that's not too on the nose. There's literally a place called Gateway Plaza, which is the beginning of my neighborhood. So
Yeah. Ooh, what about Ace Gate Station? Because this is it is the
Gate.
it's the entrance point to the Ace cluster. Ace Gate. Right?
Ace Gate, yeah.
Ace Gate Station. Okay. The occupation of the people in this station are. Listen, I think. I actually don't like any of this. Get out of here. And the situation, I
Sounds
also
like
don't like.
entertainment, right?
Yeah, I think we can handle coming up with the stuff with this. Yeah. Oh no, I don't want that. Edit. Okay. I'm gonna say casino and entertainment. And the situation, we don't have to have a situation yet. That's fine. Okay, so Ace Gate Station, beautiful. This planet. So this is the planet where they basically run these gladiatorial fights, this ritual combat to select their mercenaries, and I think they maybe also farm some of the other people here for workers. So what do we call this place?
Takes on average about 500 normal people to support one full-time professional soldier.
Yeah. It's a clan destination. That's funny. What if this has to do with the Seville angle?
Yeah, maybe this is Seville's contribution to the ACE
Yeah.
cluster.
Um,
Hmm.
what if it's just something like Sev 6 or something? Or
I was thinking more like Seb's claim or like Seville's challenge or hmm.
what about Sevloot?
Sevloot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That sounds like a what am I trying to say? That sounds like almost like a conjugation in a different language that
yeah, it for sure
references
is.
something.
I guess I don't know. According to Google Translate, loot is a possible French word for fight. Seville is a French name, and just I just sort of stuck
Well,
them together.
I hate to break it to you, but I think Seville is actually Spanish.
Oh well, fuck it. I think it
Eh,
works.
look, all the European aristocracy were cousins. It
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
really matter. They're all
And this is
Romance
taking
languages.
place hundreds of 1,000 years, 1,200 years in the future from now. So the idea that those languages haven't matched up at all. Don't make fun of my knowledge of language, folks, because I don't give a shit. Um, so that's for the YouTube crowd watching after the fact. Orote Seville. Um, yeah, I think let's do it. But I maybe want to um I want to add something to it though. I feel like I don't want it just to be that. I want to add. I don't know if I want to go number. Maybe prime or
Color is always good. Maybe it's red Seville.
what if it's Reville, like Revile,
Rev-
but like two L's, Reville. So it's like red and Seville and Revile all at once.
I'm down.
Dorado Gate. I don't know. Is that? I mean, no one else is gonna think of that, but It doesn't necessarily, people don't have to know why we named shit the way we did.
Well, that's just it. World building is not so much about making a world that is so intuitive that people pick up on everything immediately.
Right.
World building is about tone and timbre and setting and I think it also has to do with establishing an amount of um, reality that you can, that if people buy into a tiny bit, they benefit from.
Seville Reach.
That's
Yeah.
my personal opinion.
Yeah. Okay, I think Reveal works for me. I don't know.
I like Reveal.
Okay, well, I think we've gotten some work done. We've thought about what's going on with the IMC, the Independent Merchant Consortium. And then we did a boatload of work on Alton and its subsequent stuff, which I know it seems like we really dug in on that. Civility, play on his worm and it not being still at all. That's actually...
Oh, that's actually really good.
I like
That's
it. We're
way
taking
better.
it. We're taking it, Gearfried. We're calling this place
Sold.
Civility. Sold.
Gearfried, you did it. You did it.
Civility.
Gold star. Take inspiration.
Yeah, right. Okay. So we've got Ace Gate Station. We've got the planet Civility. Welcome to our socialization. And then we have to name the whole system. What if we name the system Reveal? No, that's too much ill. Blah, blah, blah. We could just name the system Ace Gate. Maybe that's what people call it now. Maybe it had another name. Nobody cares because the people who live on Civility don't remember what the place used to be called, because in the 600 years post Scream, their society was forced to regress to medieval technology because they lost access to interstellar shit. And then, nobody can boot up the computers that run the ancient hard drives that have the, whatever on it. Yeah, I think let's just call it Ace Gate. The system Ace Gate. What do you think?
Do it.
Okay. Cool. I know it seems like we really drilled in a lot on this zone, but this is where I want to start running. It's all run on floppy disks. Nice. Civilization. That's funny. Now that we're in the Seville puns, we've really heightened the situation here. Anyway, but so I know it seems like we really drilled in on this stuff more than maybe, like, if we're going to fill the whole sector, we're not going to have time to drill in on everything with that level of detail. But this is where I want to run my low level starting game when we get around to actually running something in this sector. So it kind of makes sense to like do more in-depth work here, than elsewhere.
That's I will say that in a different way, but it's essentially the same advice, which is, if you are a GM, if you are running a game for folks and it is a homebrew or an adapted module where you've changed things or customized things for your players, you need to start at the beginning. Or at the very least, you need to put your prep where it will matter. And that's a skill that we don't have time to dig into, and there are many YouTube videos about it that with tons of great opinions from different perspectives. My personal perspective is you prep what you want your players to know is true, and then when you're playing, your players will create truths about the setting that you don't have to. So by playing, your players will lay the foundation for the roadway that will take them through whatever the narrative you intend.
Right.
So, but obviously you have to have at least started the bridge for them to walk on.
Yeah, I know when I first started running, I did like an insane amount of work on this starting town and then sent my characters on quests immediately, miles and miles away from the starting town, and they didn't get to see tremendous amounts of the work that I'd done, which wasn't terrible because I then like stole that work and put it in other places. Like they got to the next place and I realized I hadn't made a blacksmith, except in my first place I made like 7 blacksmiths. So I just plucked one of the ones I had put and dumped it in the other town. So all of that would
And
ended up being fun.
that's another thing too. Even if you go overboard,
Yeah.
remember that here's my tip. If you create something that you're very fond of, like you made 7 blacksmiths and they're all so friggin' cool, you don't want to give up that work. You did that work. It has value. Reuse it.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep it, like pocket it away, save it. Don't just like write it on a piece of paper, crumple it, set it on fire, and then throw it out. Like keep those ideas because as you run games more, as I am, trying to catch up to Pixel, but you build a bag of tricks, shorthand, archetypes, characters, voices, everything. And it's in the novel combination of those shorthand pieces that you build interesting, fun tools for your players.
Yeah, exactly. Also, another, and then my like last little tip, because I think we're wrapping up here. I think you saw us doing this a little bit today. My number one strategy for world building is to pick a thing I think is cool. For instance, what if this whole society was based on the idea that every single person was like their own entry on a stock ticker, and that their personal brand was like a brand, right? You watched us kind of take that and begin to extrapolate. Okay, if that's true, what else must be true? And that's kind of how I do it, right? Like if I say, okay, well, if everyone's a stock brand, what would be the kinds of things that people would do to raise their personal brand? Well, what if it's all social media based and stuff like that, right? And so all you can see how we got from like that initial core idea. We branched out a couple times, and then we kind of got to the end of that branch, right? And we either moved on to something else or went back and picked a new thing to begin to branch off of. And that's basically my approach to world building, right? Keeping in mind, of course,
Right.
the idea of only prep what you need. But yeah, thank you guys, Gearfried and 5 O'Clock Shadowlord, for all of your contributions tonight.
Awesome work, guys.
I
Thanks.
much appreciate it. We'll be doing this again next week. Probably. And then the following week on, I think the 28th, I'm going to be teaching people how to create characters for this setting. I do have one more question for you, Beast. You don't have to answer right now.
Yeah.
One of the issues too is that like Tuesday nights, Bonus Mom has this like discussion thing in the Discord. Is there a chance we could do next Monday instead? Just to give anyone who's in the Discord.
Sure.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing Tuesdays because I was running my own D&D campaign in the Beast Wilds, my personal fantasy setting, on Tuesday nights. And Tuesday nights were just like the day that opened up since I have finished that campaign. But I'm flexible, and I'm here for the people.
All right. So I think tentatively we're going to say we're going to do this again on the 20th. And let me jump over to our main cam. And thank you guys for hanging out. We appreciate it. And we will do more world building next time. There's no chance that we'll get like everything made. We might try and quickly wrap up the Ace Gate or the Ace Cluster and then do some work on the merchants, who are probably the next most important faction. And then we may, if we have time, do like a cursory once over of this like war cluster down in the bottom that you guys saw. And one of the other things about all this, of course, is that as soon as any of this comes into contact with the players, they may all decide they want to play a really different flavor of game, where they're like, oh, all of our favorite sci-fi settings are Cowboy Bebop and frickin' Firefly. And so I'm like, okay, well now if we want to do that, we got to do like a space western vibe, right? So so we'll see what happens when we get in contact with the players. But this is all the kind of preliminary groundwork stuff.
I would take that thought one step further, which is to say, well, for me personally, no matter how much world building I do or prep that I do for a campaign, one of the most important things for me as a game master is making sure that my players feel like it was made for their character. So there's always going to be some amount of customization or inclusion, whether that's you leading them to that or them offering the idea and you building it in. I think that's what makes that magic happen. And I would recommend that you try to do that in all of your games.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, guys. Well, I personally don't really. I have to go to work like immediately, so I don't know that I can raid anybody really. Because I hate to just like raid and run. Is there
All
anybody
right,
you guys
everyone
know who's live?
who's watching, just go find someone to watch.
I guess. Let me ask this: is there anybody that you guys know who's live that you want us to send to, that you like personally know these folks, that won't
Don't
hate
have
me
to
for
go,
immediately having to go to work
but you can't
and not
stay
being able to stick
here.
around? Because otherwise, we'll just go ahead and end it. But there's Cam. What is Cam playing, Ace? He is playing Hogwarts Legacy.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yep,
I'm
nope.
not gonna rate him. I like Cam. He's a friend of ours. I'm not at the point of like cutting people out of my life over playing that game, which maybe is, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, I'm not gonna be rating him while he's playing that game. Unfortunately. Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and end, folks. So thank you guys for hanging out. We'll be back at this again next Monday, and then we'll be doing character creation hopefully Tuesday the 28th, giving our players, sort of temporary players, a chance to really make some characters, and we'll go through the tutorialize that for you. If you've liked what we're doing and you enjoy this system, you can get it for free on DriveThruRPG. Then there's also a deluxe edition you can buy. And I'm excited to show you guys some other RPGs outside of just D&D. So that's it for me, friends. And thank you, Beast, for helping out. Thank you guys in chat for
Always happy to be here.
Yeah, for helping out, and we'll catch you later.
Peace.
Let me tell a tale of a world where heroes walk among us, fighting through the darkness left by monsters and by selfish men. A tale of glory rents asunder, sacrifice and battles lost. Our heroes know not what awaits them, and still they carry on. Let me sing a song